My parents beat me at my brother's party with a champagne bottle because I refused to sign over my $450,000 condo, but my next move turned their celebration into a nightmare they'll never forget. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. They hit me with the bottle just after dessert was served. The music was still playing. My brother Lazaro had just finished his birthday toast. Tessely was laughing too loud at something Dad said, and I remember thinking how strangely calm it all was until my mother's fingers curled around my wrist like a vice and dragged me toward the kitchen hallway. "We're not doing this here," I said, but we did. The moment I told them I won't sign over the condo, my father's face dropped into something I hadn't seen since childhood. Not rage, calculation. Like he'd already made the decision, and the only thing left was the execution. "Don't be dramatic, Kezia," Delora hissed. "It's still family property. Lazaro needs it more than you. You don't even live there full-time." When I said no again, Orville didn't raise his voice, he raised the bottle of Moant. It hit my shoulder first. I felt the cold of the glass before I felt the pain. Then the world spiraled, my back against the hallway wall, my vision dimming, the popping of the bottle as it finally broke and champagne sprayed everywhere like blood at a crime scene. It didn't stop immediately. They made it look like an accident, like I slipped. Like maybe I'd had too much to drink, but I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let it rot in that hallway with the birthday balloons and the leftover shrimp cocktail. 2 days later, I returned to my condo, the one I bought, the one I fought to keep, the one my parents now wanted erased from my name. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. Maybe some old papers, maybe a shred of proof they'd tried this before. All I knew was, if they were willing to beat me over it, there was something deeper here, and I was going to find it even if it destroyed everything we ever pretended to be. The condo felt colder than I remembered. Not physically, the AC still worked fine, but emotionally, like something sacred had been violated. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by silence, trying to breathe without feeling like a trespass in my own home. I hadn't been back since the hospital, since I lied to the nurse about tripping on a rug and catching the corner of a table. No x-rays, just gauze, painkillers, and a medical bill I couldn't stomach yet. What hurt more than my shoulder was how fast Lazaro called to ask if I was okay, and then immediately asked if I'd thought more about the deed. I didn't answer him. Instead, I walked into the office nook near the kitchen, the one space I used to protect from my parents' visits. Delora used to joke, Kezia's little war room. I opened the drawer she always ignored. My file folders were still there, HOA papers, tax returns, the loan documents from when I bought the place without a co-signer. No gifts, no inheritance, just hard work and quiet independence. I started flipping through them, searching for what I wasn't sure, proof, a slip-up, something they'd left behind the last time they visited. That's when I saw it. The envelope wasn't mine. It was tucked between old appliance manuals, brown paper, unlabeled. But inside, I found a folded memo stamped from a law office in Coral Springs, not the firm I'd used when buying the condo, but a name I vaguely recognized. Marlo Farrenlept. The letter was dated 8 months ago. It read, "As per your request, we've reviewed the preliminary quitclaim draft. Since Kezia Sullivan is the sole owner on title with no legal liens, transferring ownership to another family member would require her voluntary consent." I froze. The document was addressed to Orville Sullivan. They'd been planning this long before the birthday dinner. Quietly, legally, strategically, my father had gone to a lawyer to prepare a title transfer without my knowledge, hoping, I assume, to pressure me into signing when the moment came. Suddenly, the attack made more sense. They hadn't just snapped, they had a plan that failed, and I became the consequence. I sat back in the kitchen chair, the one they used to sip wine and play loving parents on holidays. My whole body started shaking. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't imagining it. They had tried to erase me, not emotionally, not just as a daughter, but as a legal person, and now I had the first crack in their mask. I didn't call them. I didn't send a text. I scanned the memo, emailed it to myself, then put the original back where I found it just in case. The next morning, I showed up at their house. Delora opened the door like she always did. That tight smile stretched across her lips like plastic wrap over spoiled meat. "You look better," she said, voice syrupy. "See what a few days of rest can do." I stepped past her without permission. Orville was in the living room, reading the paper like it was any other Tuesday. His eyes flicked up when I entered, but he didn't say a word. He just folded the paper neatly and set it on the coffee table. "Did you think I wouldn't find it?" I said. "What are you talking about?" He asked, tone calm, like I'd just accused him of misplacing the remote. "The letter from Marlo Farren, the quit-claim deed you tried to prepare behind my back." Delora's smile twitched. Orville just sighed. "That was a precaution, My voice cracked. "You were plotting to take my home. You went to a lawyer months ago and you didn't even have the guts to tell me. You're overreacting." Delora cut in. "You never treated that place like a home anyway. Always traveling, always keeping us out." "It's mine," I snapped. "I paid every cent on that mortgage. Not you, not Dad, and certainly not Lazaro." My father stood up slowly, smoothing his shirt like he was preparing for court. "You've always been dramatic, Kezia. Always turning small things into personal wars. You hit me." I said. "Silence." "You picked up a bottle and cracked it over my shoulder because I said no." "That's not what happened," Delora whispered, I have pictures of the bruises, and what are you going to do with them? Orville asked, voice suddenly colder. Sue your own parents? Drag us through court for the internet to gawk at? I stared at him long and hard. If I have to. He stepped closer. Be very careful, Kezia. You're not the only one with receipts. You forget what you signed when you got that condo. You forget who helped you file your taxes that year. It was a threat, veiled, legalistic but clear. They were counting on my silence, on my guilt, on the idea that no one would believe the child over the respectable parents. But I wasn't a child anymore, and they weren't untouchable. I turned on my heel and left. Heart pounding, mind already spinning. I didn't have proof yet, but I had motive. I had a timeline, and now I had intent. If they wanted a war, I'd bring one, paper by paper, clause by clause, brick by brick. I made the call that afternoon. I hadn't spoken to Marlo Steinberg in almost 2 years. She was the one who helped me close on the condo, sharp as glass, no nonsense, and allergic to pleasantries. But she never forgot a detail, and more importantly, she didn't scare easy. When she picked up, her voice was the same, clipped, direct. This is Marlo. Hi, it's Kezia Sullivan. I need legal help, and I think it's going to get messy. A pause, then talk. We met the next day at her office, a cramped space above a payday loan place, with a flickering hallway light that buzzed like a bad conscience. She poured us both coffee that tasted like burned pencils, and motioned for me to sit. I handed her the scanned memo from Orville's lawyer. She scanned it once, twice, her eyes narrowed. Jesus, yeah, I said. They've been planning to transfer the deed to my brother. I said no. They assaulted me, and now they're acting like none of it happened. She looked at me hard. Do you have medical records, photos of the injuries? Just pictures I took in the mirror. Take them again in natural light, and write down exactly what happened that night. No edits, no filters, every ugly detail. I nodded. And the deed? You still have the original? I pulled it from my folder. She inspected it like a jeweler checking a diamond. Your sole title holder, she confirmed. No liens, no secondary names. They have zero legal claim unless you sign it over willingly. But, they could try to retroactively argue you received it as a family asset. Or that your father assisted in financing. You need to lock down all your payment records, prove that every cent came from your own account. I have my bank statements, I said, and the condo came from my freelance savings and 2 years of working triple shifts. My parents didn't contribute a dime, then start printing all of it, from the first deposit to the final closing fee. We're going to document every damn step. That was the easy part. The hard part was what she said next. If they were willing to break a bottle over your shoulder. They're not going to stop at threats. They'll escalate, gaslight, play victim. You'll be cast as ungrateful, unstable, selfish. They already have, I muttered. Told my aunt I was going through something. Told my cousin I'd been emotionally fragile lately. Marlo tapped the side of her mug. Then we beat them the way they hate most. How facts. That night, I sat in my condo surrounded by paperwork, scanning every receipt, every digital invoice I'd ever saved. I was building a timeline not just of ownership, but of independence, the financial anatomy of a woman they wanted to erase. Round midnight, I opened a folder labeled Closing Week Docs. I hadn't touched it since I moved in. Inside, I found a printed checklist from the title company. Most of it was standard disclosures, appraisal paperwork, notary stamps. But near the bottom, one line jumped out at me: recorded security cam copy submitted by buyer, requested by client for post-possession concerns. I frowned. I barely remembered asking for that, but it triggered something. There had been a dispute, a wiring issue in the garage. I'd asked the title agent to document everything, including the final walkthrough, and they had. I checked the envelope attached to the back of the folder, still sealed, dated, and stamped. Inside was a mini flash drive. Labeled Condo Security Camera Export Walkthrough Footage 8:14 am March 3. My pulse kicked up. If the footage still worked, if I could match dates, show possession, prove I was the only one entering the property in the first 3 months, I'd have a time-stamped third-party file that no one in my family could tamper with. My father once said paper trails are for people who plan to lose. He was right, but this time, I was planning to win. The next morning, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It was slow to load, a few seconds that felt like minutes. The screen flickered once, then opened a basic folder: Security Export Walkthrough Footage 3:3. Pef. I clicked. The video quality wasn't great, but it was clear enough. A silent, grainy, time-stamped recording from the security camera outside the condo unit, angled from the far corner of the covered parking lot. You could see the front door, the sidewalk, the lockbox. The first 30 seconds were nothing but stillness. Then I appeared in frame alone, carrying a folder and a realtor's coffee cup. The digital timestamp at the bottom read March 3, 8:14 am. I scrubbed forward. I was alone for the entire clip. No Delora, no Orville, no Lazaro, no one but me. I felt a sharp thud in my chest, the kind that comes not from surprise, but confirmation. This was the day I'd closed, the day the keys became mine. The camera was from the management company's angle, not mine. Not my family's. No one could claim it was tampered with. This was proof of possession, of privacy, of independence, and yet, something about it made my hands tremble, because if this could prove I was the rightful owner, then it could also make me a target. I didn't tell anyone I had the footage. Not even Marlo. I backed it up to a cloud folder, added a passcode, and saved 3 separate copies to encrypted flash drives I hid in different places, one in my coat lining, one in a cereal box, and one at Amina's apartment taped under her sink. Where no one would look unless they needed bleach. I didn't trust anyone, not now. 2 nights later, I got a call at 1:47 am, no caller ID. The ringtone was shrill against the silence. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes after that, I got a text from Lazaro. Kez, we need to talk. It's getting out of hand. I stared at the screen. Out of hand. You let Mom break a bottle over my shoulder. You stood there while she screamed about how I was hoarding the family's future. You didn't even flinch. I didn't reply. The next day, I went to grab groceries. When I came back, the condo door looked off. It wasn't broken, no damage, but the deadbolt felt soft, like someone had tried to pick it. My stomach turned cold. I pushed the door open slowly, hard hammering. Nothing looked disturbed. Except for the drawer where I'd left my binder of original closing documents. It was open. The folder was gone. I tore through the apartment. Nothing else was missing. Not my laptop, not my passport, not even the jewelry in the dish beside the sink. Just that folder. I dropped to my knees in the kitchen, fingers digging through cabinets like a panic-stricken raccoon. Gone, all of it. I called Marlo. She answered on the first ring. Tell me you're okay. No, I said, voice shaking. Someone was here. My documents are gone. Police report, now, and change your locks today. I'll draft a letter of intent to preserve the original ownership record in case they try something cute. And the footage, I asked. Keep it buried. We only bring it out when it matters. That night, I slept in the bathtub with the door locked and a knife in my hand. I wasn't scared of being hurt again. I was scared of being erased. Not from life, from the record, from property law, from documentation, from everything that made me real in a world my parents wanted to rewrite. If they could walk into my home and steal the past, I'd have to outsmart them with the future. I didn't go to the police, not yet. Call it stupidity, call it trauma response. But deep down, I knew what they'd say. Do you have video of the break-in? Was the lock broken? Anything missing besides paperwork? And when I told them it was my parents, they'd write me off as a girl with a grudge. So instead, I called Marlo again. This time she didn't pick up. I tried her office, straight to voicemail, tried her personal line. This number is currently unavailable. My chest tightened. I sent an email, urgent. Please call, condo docs stolen, and hit refresh every 10 minutes for the next hour. Nothing. At 4:17 p.m. Emma, I finally got a reply. Subject urgent. Kezia, I've reviewed your situation. Unfortunately, due to a conflict of interest that has come to light, I must withdraw as your counsel, effective immediately. Sincerely, MS. No explanation. No suggestion for a referral. Just gone. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the cold white glow of that message until my fingers went numb. They'd gotten to her. Somehow, some way, my parents had reached in and snapped my only legal anchor. Maybe it was a threat. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was something from her past I didn't know, and I'd never find out, because Marlo, the only person who believed me without question, had officially vanished from the board. I was alone again. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat in the middle of my living room. Lights off, curtains drawn, with the last flash drive pressed between my palms like a rosary. They were closing every door, every option, every alley. And still, they hadn't touched the one place they thought didn't matter. The parking lot. That stupid, cracked strip of concrete out back, the one I inherited along with the unit. Space 38, uncovered, nobody ever wanted it. I used to joke it was my little slice of asphalt heaven. And that's when it hit me. I'd parked there every day for the first 6 months after closing, before I moved out temporarily for renovations. Back when I'd installed a cheap third-party dashcam in my old Jeep, paranoid after a neighbor got their mirror clipped. I hadn't used that dashcam in over a year, but I never threw it out. I bolted to the hall closet, yanking down storage bins like a woman possessed, old router boxes, winter coats, expired Nyxil, then shoved behind a broken space heater. I found it, a black plastic clamshell with a cracked hinge and a label that read VREAK2. Zero. My heart slammed in my chest. I grabbed my laptop, plugged it in. The interface was clunky, ancient, but the footage still loaded. The files were named by date. Each folder held time-stamped AVI files in 10-minute blocks, grainy, shaky, audioless. I scrolled back to the week of closing. March 3rd, 8 am, the same date as the condo walkthrough footage, and there I was through the windshield holding the deed envelope in one hand, fumbling with my condo key in the other. No one else in sight, no one approaching, no voices, just me. I skipped forward, March 4th, 5th, 6th, every day. I came and went alone until March 8th. I nearly dropped the laptop. At 7:12 am, a figure appeared in the frame. Delora. She wasn't supposed to have keys, but there she was slipping something into the passenger seat of my Jeep while looking over her shoulder. The recording had no sound, but I knew that body language, guilt. I hit pause, zoomed in. The object in her hand looked flat, like an envelope. That was the day after I got a call from the HOA about missing insurance forms, ones I knew I'd submitted. Had she planted a duplicate? Or worse, had she removed something? I didn't know yet, but what I did know was that I now had footage of unauthorized access, video time-stamped and digitally backed up from an independent device, one that had never connected to Wi-Fi, never backed up to any cloud my parents could scrub. The flash drive could be dismissed, the memo could be shredded, but this was mine. I wasn't a ghost in my own story anymore. I had presence, I had footage, and soon I'd have witnesses. I didn't go public, not yet. I needed a new ally, one my parents hadn't already reached. Smeared, or bought off, someone outside the Sullivan orbit. Someone who had power and wouldn't flinch. That's when I remembered Amina's cousin. She'd mentioned him once. Darius Rhodes, a tenant rights advocate and part-time investigator. Mostly small stuff, wrongful evictions, lease fraud, landlord retaliation, but he had one thing I didn't: a clean slate, and nothing to lose. I texted Amina, "You once said your cousin's a pitbull in a suit." "Still true," she replied in under a minute. "He's meaner now. Want me to call him?" I met Darius at a coffee shop near the courthouse 2 days later. He was sharp, skeptical, and 10 minutes late on purpose. But the second he saw the footage, his eyebrows shot up. "You sure this was never uploaded anywhere? Offline since forever?" I said. "Never connected to anything. Just sat in my closet like an abandoned pet." "And that's your mother?" "Yep. She doesn't have a key. She's not on the lease. I never gave her permission." "And what's that in her hand?" "I don't know. But that was the morning the Hoa claimed I missed insurance forms." "I didn't. I think she either planted a fake copy or removed the originals." Darius leaned back. "You've got more than tenant harassment here. If she tampered with official paperwork tied to your ownership, you're looking at fraud, possibly conspiracy to commit real estate theft." I stared at him. He smiled. "Don't worry. I live for this kind of crap." We built a timeline. Darius brought in a forensic tech to extract the dashcam metadata. He paired it with the original condo footage, the email from the title company, and the memo from Orville's lawyer. Every piece led to one conclusion: they had tried to erase me. Legally, physically, digitally, and when I resisted, they escalated. Darius drafted a preliminary complaint for coercion, property interference, assault, and civil conspiracy, and then he sent it with attachments to 3 places: the county clerk, the state real estate board, and the Sullivan family's attorney of record. CCing Orville Sullivan's firm address, it took exactly 36 hours before I got the call. Blocked number. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Kezia," my father's voice crackled, controlled, measured. "Let's not make this uglier than it already is. Too late. You think you're clever. You think this little tantrum makes you strong? No, but the court system does." He laughed, the kind of hollow, bitter sound that tries to pass as casual. "You really want this to go public? Your mother's reputation? Your brother's? You broke a bottle over my shoulder because I refused to be erased. Now I'm just showing people the receipt." Silence, then more quietly. "We never wanted it to go this far. You wrote the script," I said. I just read it out loud. The court date came faster than I expected. I didn't dress for sympathy. I dressed for ownership. Charcoal suit, black flats, hair slicked back like I was the plaintiff in a 6-figure civil suit. Because I was. My parents came with their lawyer, smug, polished, fake concerned. Delora wore a gray shawl and trembling hands. Orville didn't look at me. My heart thumped so loud I thought the bailiff could hear it. But when the judge played the dashcam footage, when Delora's face popped up on that grainy screen, slipping an envelope into my Jeep without permission, even she stopped pretending. Her hand shot up to her mouth. The courtroom held its breath. Orville's lawyer stood, trying to object. Something about relevance, but the judge leaned forward. "Did your client have legal access to the property?" She was concerned about answer the question. "No, Your Honor." Silence. That was the moment it cracked. Not the case. The illusion that my family was perfect, that I was the broken one, the unstable one, the girl who couldn't just be grateful. Now I was the homeowner. Now I was the plaintiff. Now I was real. The judge ordered an immediate restraining order against both parents. The court launched a formal investigation into the alleged deed coercion. A mediator was assigned to oversee my condo's title protection, confirming sole ownership, and preserving it under independent oversight. And Darius, he smiled as we walked out. "You didn't just beat them," he said. "You documented their downfall." I never moved back in full time. The condo became my office, a shrine to survival. I rented another place nearby, smaller, warmer, freer. The broken drawer in the condo kitchen? Still there. I never fixed it. Every time I open it, I remember what they tried to take. Not just my home, my identity, my reality. They thought I'd limp away quietly. But I wrote everything down, and I made sure the world could read it. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.